Do you yearn for travel that involves outdoor adventure and learning? I do. I also have a passion for all things farming and agriculture. I've traveled to exotic jungles to learn about growing chocolate. I even once owned my own organic vegetable and sunflower farm. And now I'm planning my journey back to agriculture. Agritourism, defined as travel that involves some type of agricultural experience. Agritourism is all about entertaining. But the marketing strategist in me knows that, at its core, agritourism is really about educating, and education affects change. My future farm needs to deliver a profound experience to all of its visitors. It needs to educate people about food, health, and climate. Join me to learn from experienced agritourism farmers and entrepreneurs and help me build my future farm strategy. And who knows, maybe one day soon you'll find yourself in a tropical jungle cutting open cacao pods with a machete, or savoring an outdoor plant-to-plate community dinner with 100 guests at a farm in Illinois. So let's tap into the agritourist in you. Welcome to the Agritourist Podcast. This is your host, Jen Ross. When I was a kid, I did not like history class, or as we called it, social studies. For me, it felt like the classes were about memorizing textbook material and dates. I was not lucky enough to have teachers that made it more exciting to learn about history and its importance, relevance, and connection to the now. However, as an adult, I have a whole new appreciation for history, learning about history, and even teaching history. I am on the board of my local historical society, have developed classes for our 1850 one-room schoolhouse, and actually teach some of those classes. I love watching kids experience history versus just reading about it and memorizing facts. Well, what is better than tourism coupled with learning about history? To me, it creates an amazing experience for any age. And that is what Susan Meredith from Blackwater Adventures has created in Dorchester County, Maryland. In 2002, husband and wife team Jay and Susan Meredith decided to start Blackwater Paddle and Pedal Adventures. The Hyatt Chesapeake Bay Resort had just been built, and Blackwater Refuge was becoming a frequent destination for people searching for a weekend nature fix. And as you will learn, the properties that Susan and Jay own hold some significant history around the Underground Railroad. One of the sites is where abolitionist Harriet Tubman was hit in the head with a counterweight as a young girl, which altered the course of her life. Jay and Susan used entrepreneurial vision and strong work ethic to help develop Blackwater Adventures into a successful tourism enterprise. And although they are focused on delivering extraordinary kayaking, biking, fishing, and other outdoor adventures, their adventures are coupled with a passion for teaching the stories about the past. And this certainly differentiates their outdoor adventures and helps them stand out from the rest. Enjoy my conversation with adventurer and historian Susan Meredith. So welcome. Thank you for taking the time. I know it's a busy time of year right now, at least from a holiday perspective.
Right.
So let's just start out with you. Tell me a little bit about you and your background, and then we'll kind of lead up to how, to Blackwater and how this all came about.
How far back in the background do you want?
I don't know what it's as far as you want to go, like I don't know what you did before this, what your background is as far as what you did, where you grew up, stuff like that.
Okay. All right. Well, as a little kid, I grew up on the Choptank River. I mean, literally. And the hospital was across the street. So my parents walked across the street home with me. So when I do tours, a lot of people love to hear that, that I'm the little girl that you heard about with the inner tube and the the basket in the middle of it, and put my crabs in it. And I caught what I wanted, and I went home and I cooked them and cleaned them and ate them. Or a soft crab. I just think it's one of the funniest things to tell people that I don't even know that an adult could do what I did, or what we did as kids back then. But go through the seaweed, you find how many soft crabs you wanted, and then you'd put them there in front of you, and you'd watch them pull out of the shell. And it was fascinating. I would love to go back and do it again, but it takes a long time. And it's a lot of fun. So I was born on the Choptank River. My family were all merchants. As far as we can tell, my husband's family were all farmers. So it's worked out good. It's worked out good for us. And I'm the
What
fifth of
kind,
six
just a quick
children.
question, what kind of farmers, when you say farmers, what do you mean?
Well, they lived down here in Bucktown and they grew food back in those days.
Okay.
I mean, today now it's all feed, but back in the day it was food to sell to people.
Yep.
A lot of people don't know this, but Dorchester County is a place where we own the store where Harriet Tubman committed her first known act of defiance. And one of the things that I like to tell them is that if you think she was uneducated, you are sorely mistaken. She was not uneducated. She was very educated in everything she needed to be educated about to accomplish the things in her life that she did. And a lot of people don't know this, but Dorchester County is the largest county in the state of Maryland, the greenest county, and the least developed still to this day. We're shaped like a great big heart. We're only attached to the state of Maryland by 28 miles of land.
Oh, wow.
And we own 1,700 miles of the over 3,000 miles of shoreline in Maryland. So 1,700 of it is here. So when you look at our county, right, like a big heart, you'll see that the Choptank River's on this side, the Chesapeake Bay's down here at the bottom, Taylor's Island, and then on this side is the Nanticoke River. And if you look at Google Earth, you will see that those two rivers in that bay have tributaries that go all the way up into the middle of this county. And do you know what a huckster is?
No.
So you should.
So tell me.
You should know what a huckster is. I love the Food Network and oh gosh, Zimmerman. He was in Baltimore with one of the last hucksters there is, and that would be good for you. You'd love that. It's a great story. So anyway, a huckster is somebody that goes to the farmer, buys what they're selling at a wholesale, and then goes and sells it for retail. My mother would go see the huckster on the corner of Washington Street and Race because that huckster in the back of his truck had Silver Queen white corn. She didn't want any other corn, but Silver Queen white corn. So she knew what kind of cantaloupe she wanted. There was those two different veining on cantaloupe. And so, she knew where she wanted to, what huckster she wanted to go to. So anyway, that's what a huckster is. So right here in the county, we grew a lot of food. We gave all the rations. We made most of the rations for World War II. So if you go in the, like an antique store, you'll turn it over and it'll say Cambridge, Maryland. So it was all about food here, canning factories and all that stuff. And so what happened back in those days is that these ships would come up into all these tributaries and they'd come to these piers, and either the farmer or the farmer's slave would sell the food to take to the masses all up and down the bay. So those people didn't have farmland and they didn't have any way to grow their food, and this is where they got their food. So how that works out with the Underground Railroad is that when she, or especially her father was owned by a man named Dr. Anthony Thompson, and they had a father-son relationship. So basically, he even gave him home lands, all kinds of stuff. So her father had freedom to go wherever he wanted, and he really was not treated like a slave. And so he would go, and a lot of times that he was probably one of the foremost authorities on the stations of the Underground Railroad, because he would go to sell the food and he would hear what these ship captains were telling them, what the stations were. Is that not cool? So that's how they knew what to do when they ran away. They didn't just run. Slaves did not just run away. They knew what they were doing, and it was a network. It was a very, very, very organized network. They didn't just run away.
How do you know all this? Where did this information, did this get just carried down through family? How do you know all this?
So we'll go back to 16. So I was 16 years old. I met a very cute guy. And when I met this cute guy, he has 3 strikes against him. Number 1, he's 5 years older than me. I'm 16. He's 21, jailbait. Number 2, he's very handsome. Handsome guys don't settle down with anybody, right? They play the field, let alone a 16-year-old girl. And number 3, he had a motorcycle. So I thought, well, indeed, I've died and gone to heaven here. He's 5 years older. He's really handsome. He's got a motorcycle. He's got this
Susan,
yellow
you're great.
Duster, black striped muscle car. And I thought, well, this is great. But anyway, my parents let me date him because he was a nerd. And he still is a nerd. He's the nerdiest of all nerds. And all he wanted to do was talk about his family's genealogy. And so our dates back then is we would go to all the old people in his family, and I'd take the yellow legal pad and write down the question he'd ask, and then I'd write down what they said. And after we did all his family, and we even went to Washington, D.C., his aunt was the first woman doctor in Dorchester County. It's very cool. So
Wow.
we even went to Washington, D.C., where one of his aunts, his great aunt, where she lived in Washington, D.C. So it was, and we got a lot of stuff from her because nobody cared about old stuff. And so we have a lot of his family's heirlooms that have been handed down, and still his family members bring them down here to us. So we live in a 1794 story colonial, and we're the fourth generation to live here. So
Wow.
I know. So that's how I know all this stuff, because I was 16.
When you were doing this project with him, what was the purpose at that time? Just to,
No, he just wanted to know. He was curious. He just I
that's
don't know. I mean,
interesting for a
you
young
know, if you would
man.
ask, I'll tell you, he was asked. The Harriet Tubman Visitor Center is here because the museum in Cambridge, the Harriet Tubman Museum, and Jay and I at the store, we were seeing all these people come, and they were saying, "Where's your park? Where's your statue?" And we were like, "I'm my hairdresser. My husband works for the state, really." And all the people at the museum, they were like farmers, heat and air conditioning guys, mechanics. You're just like, so we started harassing our local politicians, who started harassing the states and then went to the feds. I met Ken Salazar, who was in charge of the Department of the Interior, when at the end, when everything was proven, so that they ended up building the Harriet Tubman Visitor Center. So see, all of that snowballed to all kinds of things in between there and here.
Wow.
It's been quite the
Wow.
adventure.
Okay, so you're doing all this research. Were you guys married? When did you marry, I guess? When did you get married?
Gosh, we met in 1978 and we got married in 1981.
So I was recently listening to one of the Grounded in Maine podcasts produced by Amy Fagan. The podcast is an open conversation about being mindful about how we show up in the world. It's focused on sustainability and how sustainability impacts every part of our life. What are some of the most important takeaways that people will get from your podcast?
One of the things that I hope that people will take away from the podcast is encouragement. Like, I want them to not feel like you have to spend thousands of dollars to be part of the solution, because, there are a lot of sustainable, things that say sustainability or sustainable, like solar panels or organic cotton and stuff like that. Like, some things are just more expensive because they have that tagline, that phrase or whatever. But there are so many ways that you can be sustainable. You just have to be a little bit creative. And so I'm putting out all these ideas that what people are doing, just to put the thought out there that we can all be part of it without going broke.
So how can people find your podcast?
My podcast is wherever podcasts are found. It is just called Grounded in Maine. I also have my Instagram is where I am most active, and the Instagram handle is Grounded in Maine Podcasts.
And when did this project launch with both of you, as far as starting all this research?
No project, just life, No, just life. We went to talk to all the old people in his family. We went and talked to every time we had a minute, and then we talked to all the old people in my family. And, it was just life, Nobody, we never saw it as a project. And it still is today. I mean, it's still, and we have 3 kids and 8 grandchildren. And they could be sitting here talking to you about all this stuff just like I am. They grew up in all of it. They all live in historical homes. Wesley lives on the land where an Underground Railroad, a big story about it called the Dover 8 happened. And they all live on their ancestors' home. So my son lives down here on the land where Harriet Tubman was born. And that's the land him and his family own and live on. He moved an old house, went back to the Revolutionary War, and has restored it and remodeled it, and restored it. And then Casey lives on the Transquaking River, where Harriet Tubman said was her favorite river. So they all live within walking distance, and they all bought into the story.
So as you started learning all of this information, I guess, what resonated with you? Like, what were you feeling about it?
Well, it was just fun. I mean, it still is fun. wouldn't be sitting here talking to you. It's just fun. I we own a little business called Blackwater Adventures, and it started out as Blackwater Paddle and Pedal, where we did bicycles and kayaks. We bought 4 Trek bicycles, 4 Wilderness System kayaks, which were the top of the line. To me, they still are. And so we're a dealership for Wilderness System now, which is really funny. And we built it into something that today is bigger than I could ever have dreamed. We own a tomato canning factory down on the Little Blackwater. The tomato canning factory sits on a land owned by James Cook, and James Cook was the owner of Modesty, Harriet Tubman's grandmother. And so we own this little tomato canning factory where Blackwater National Wildlife Refuge, which is our biggest tourist attraction, is within walking distance. So you can see it from where we are. We paddle in it a little bit. And now we partnered with the Hyatt. We opened the same year they did in 2002. And we entertain all their groups. We take them on a Chesapeake Bay experience. And so when they come there for a conference, we meet with them and talk with them about what they want to do on their 2 hours. So we take them charter fishing and clay shooting and biking, hiking, kayaking, just all kinds of crazy stuff, just to entertain people when they come here with real people from the Chesapeake Bay. It's fun.
When you first started the business, like what were you thinking when you first started? So was there a need? It was just something you enjoyed doing? How did it get started?
I guess we got to go back to the 16-year-old. So in 1979, I met Jay in September of 78. In March of 1979 was the day that I still will never forget. We got on his motorcycle and we rode down here in Bucktown, where we live now. And we rode by this corner, and this is what he said. So he was looking at the store. He said, I want to run my grandfather's store. So we're the 4th generation to own the Bucktown General Store. They didn't own it until after the Civil War. And then he said, we'll take care of our parents in the little yellow storekeeper's house. So you've got store, driveway, storekeeper's house. And then back a little bit is the big house, which is the 1794-story colonial. And he said, we'll raise our kids in the big house and we'll rent canoes and kayaks and bicycles down Blackwater National Wildlife. And I said, well, that sounds great. There you go. That's how it started.
I'm pretty impressed with that.
Right. So Jay has been on the Heritage Board and tourism stuff. He just retired from the State Highway Administration. He was the District 1 manager and in charge of 4 counties here in Maryland. And so he had a lot of connections. And so the Department of Tourism, the lady Natalie Jabot, she knew that that's what he wanted to do. So she said to him one day, she said, Jay, hey, there's this place over in Salisbury and they're giving away grants to start outfitting businesses. And that was the year that this book had come out, and I bought it at a national park, and it was called Last Child in the Woods. Have you ever heard of it?
No.
Oh, you should read it. It's
yes.
fascinating. And so I was sitting there reading the book one night, and I said to Jay, I said, I have read this paragraph 3 times. I said, I don't know what it's saying. I don't understand what it's saying. And I read it to him. And it was talking about this kid having this absolute nervous breakdown because there was not an electric plug in his tent, right? And he said, he can't plug in his games. And I was like, oh, right? I mean, listen, I grew up outdoors. Listen, I read it 3 times and I was just like, I don't know what's wrong with this. What does this paragraph mean? So that's what was going on in the United States. So people wanted to get kids outdoors before they didn't want to go outdoors anymore. So we got this grant for $5,000. We bought 4 Wilderness System kayaks, 4 Trek bicycles, and 2 Old Town canoes. We still have the 2 canoes. We have a couple of the kayaks too from the beginning. 22 years this year. So we started with that grant, and the Hyatt had opened the same year. So the first year I did all their bike tours. Now remember, I had 4 bikes. So I love to wheel and deal. So the bike place that I bought it from over in Salisbury, Buzz at Salisbury, it's like I go to Buzz and I really liked him. And I love anybody. So anyway, so I said, Buzz, I said, I got this big tour at the Hyatt. And I said, I got 10 people coming. I said, so here's the deal. If you give me the bikes, when I get paid, I'll pay you for the bikes. And that's how I did it. And the same thing, the kayak, there was a place called, it was over in Salisbury. But anyway, he sold stoves. And that was his main business. That was the name of his business, Rick. Oh gosh, so anyway, I went to Rick and I did the same thing. So the second year I did their bike and kayak tours. I said, Rick, I got this big tour with the Hyatt. Now they got money. They got money. Now I need these kayaks to do the tour because I'm going to. So anyway, that's how it happened. And we just snowballed. And this year we are doing our first winter adventure. And the Hyatt has partnered with us and we put in our first ice skating rink. So that opened on November 30th.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so we love people, we love to entertain, we love where we're from, we love to talk about it. All of us.
Yeah, well, there's such a rich history.
Oh gosh, rich.
That part of it is, there's your core. There's your core differentiator.
Sure. You got my grandfather who owned a store in East Cambridge and on that Cambridge Creek, he had 9 skipjacks. I mean, he was a merchant and he sent them to bring things back. And that was it's just really cool that both of our families were entrepreneurs. And his family his mother was born on Hooper's Island and they had 9 cabins or 3 cabins and people would come stay in the cabins so they could fish. And they had this little, they called it a little lunchroom where, they had the food and the pool table to play pool. And so both of us have that in our blood. So God help the little 8 grandchildren. You know what they do right now? They carve decoys and sell them on Instagram. I have beautiful things that they've made, bracelets. We have this thing in Cambridge called the showcase that the art center puts on. And my granddaughter was there selling her bracelets. She sold over $300 worth of bracelets. So they,
That's terrific.
so they all are, the little kids are 14 to 4. So I think
and they're already making an impact. That's terrific. So when you were doing as you've done all this history, are there any stories or one story that stands out to you that you learned? I mean, I'm sure they all do, but was there anything that a story that you tell that is something that really impacted you personally?
Probably one of the most jaw-dropping things that ever happened was when Ken Salazar came to the store and he had his entourage with him. There was this very beautiful lady and she was tall. I love fashion. She was dressed to the nines. And she took the people from the museum and Jay and I to the side when nobody was really paying attention. And she said, you don't want this state park. You don't want a national park. You don't want this. And we were like, are you crazy? Why? She said, because you don't understand. You will never own the story again. The story will never be local again. It'll go from your hands and it'll be the state and it'll be the feds and they'll say what they want. We didn't understand and it's too late. She said, look at Gettysburg. She said, look at all the people there that had their families, things. And when she said Gettysburg, there was only one family left when we went there as a little family. And you went to tour this house and she showed you the house that her family owned and the clothes that they wore. They had on these mannequin things and the letters. It was all their family stuff. And she was the last one. And all of it left and all of it's gone. And now the real history and those people and their children probably don't know the story. And it's heart-wrenching. Yeah. That's probably the biggest thing in my life that's happened that I wished I knew what she was talking about. But it was probably too late to stop it then. Anyway.
Yeah.
The things that you hear down there, sometimes you're just like, because I was born and raised here. How I learned about Harriet Tubman is Jay and I found out in our 30s because these 2 men were having this argument, this dialogue in the local newspaper, right? And they're both right. They were very highly respected men. And one was saying, that is not the story where Harriet Tubman got hit. And the other man said, yes, that is the story. And so Jay and I were like, Harriet Tubman in the store, So we were like, Harriet Tubman in the store. So we start going to the museum and we meet this guy named John Creighton. John Creighton was obsessed with Harriet Tubman and African-American history here in the county. So much so that he lost his wife and children because he ended up getting a divorce and living in the upstairs room of the Historical Society here in the county. So, which is named after Jay's great-great-great-grandfather, Thomas Meredith. It's called the Meredith House. So anyway, John was fascinating, and he did this thing called the Harriet Tubman, or the he called it the once a month he did it the Harriet Tubman discussion group, and so he would go out to these African American communities, and before he died, he ended up in other counties like Talbot and Wacomico, but he would go to these African American communities. He'd park his car and he'd see somebody, and he'd go to that person and he'd say, "Hey, I'm John Creighton with the Harriet Tubman Museum." He said, "I'm recording African American oral history. Who's the oldest person in your community? What's their name and where do they live?" And he'd go knock on their door and he'd say, "Would you come there to..." That was one of the most fascinating. When I do my tours, that's what I tell people. I say, talk to the old people. When I have people in the store over there, I'll tell these little kids, when you leave, ask your pop-up about having a phone with a cord on it. Ask him about the first TV he ever had. Ask him these questions. I said, because it's better than any game you could ever play or movie you could ever watch, because it's jaw dropping. So that's how we got into the whole Harriet Tubman, because we didn't even know. That's how we got into all that stuff. So now how I know all that stuff was from people telling their oral history. It was fascinating, and they had their pictures, and I'm the chief election judge down here in Bucktown. We only have 300 people in 2 precincts here. And guess who I've been doing elections with? His name's Mr. Edgar Tubman. And he started when we had the governor's race here in Maryland and with Westmoreland. And so he pops up right now. So I call him to say, "Hey, Mr. Ernest, this is Susan Meredith. I'm the chief judge, blah, blah, blah." And I said, "I see you live on Courtown Road." I said, "Are you related to John Tubman?" So that was Harriet Tubman's husband. And he is the great, great, great grandson.
Wow.
And so he's 80 some. I couldn't believe that he started this late doing something like this. He said, "I wanted to give back to my country." So look, if you came to vote down here in Bucktown, like I said, we only have 300. We had 150. The presidents, and we were busy, 150 people. So anyway, when we're sitting there, we don't have anything to do. I'm sitting there with him, and I'll say, "So, Mr. Ernest, tell me about this. Tell me about this. Tell me about this." And everybody's just riveted to everything he said. Like, he even told us when the last time he voted this last time, which was very cool. Anyway, I love to know things. I'm sorry, I'm just a motor mouth.
No, I absolutely love it. I mean, I'm on my local historical society. So the importance of talking to people, like what you said about, especially with kids, like I wish there's so much now, like with my grandparents and people who've passed. I'm like,
don't you want to talk to them?
Like I wish I talked to them more,
yes.
And because there's so many now unknowns and gaps in stories that are very impactful stories. And
yes,
it's so frustrating.
It is, isn't it? We've lost history.
Yes. It's so true that, especially now, I mean, I have 3 kids and my youngest is 17, almost 18, but they don't ask a lot of questions about history and the history in your own family and stuff. And I try to encourage them, but they're just not there yet.
Right.
They're not as interested yet. So it is actually pretty impressive that your husband especially was so interested, even, at a young age,
Yes.
So I'm very impressed by that.
If people saw history as an adventure, right? If they saw it as an adventure, because when people come in there to that store in schools, especially little kids that run in there and they're little, right? And I open my mouth, right? And they're like this, and they don't talk and they don't move. And then the teachers and the parents are going, history is fun if you tell the story and you don't try to tell. Like when people come in and ask me, "Do you have the name, the date?" I said, "No, man, I ain't a historian. I'm a storyteller." Heck with all that stupid stuff, Let's tell the story, because some people do want to know all that stupid stuff. My son Matthew found the only copy of the Harriet Tubman reward ad that exists in America. And Jay and I brought this stack of newspapers home from a dumpster, and he found the reward ad. So that belongs to us. So anytime you see the reward ad, used by the permission of Jay and Susan Meredith and the Bucktown Village Foundation. And he
Wow.
brought some newspapers out of a dumpster home, and he was looking through them and said, "Hey, Dad, I think I found something." So see, if kids saw history as an adventure, if they could just talk to me for a minute, right? Just give me a minute with them. Because I tell those kids, I say, listen, when you leave here, you got to talk to these old people, you know, just you've got to find out, ask them about their cat, ask them about when you met my mom, ask them where you lived the first house, just
Yep.
ask them stupid stuff, man, and they'll go off like you don't even can't
That
even
should be the history projects in school, not
Yes,
memorize the
right on,
book and
sister.
the dates.
Yes.
I get so no wonder why. I mean, when I talk to my kids about history classes, a lot of times they don't like it just because they had to memorize
Oh, it's so
everything.
dumb. Yes.
And there
Who
was
wants
no
to do that?
real way to even effectively memorize because it's just words and dates on a page. There's no
Yes.
story behind it.
Yes.
And so, yes.
If you tell the story, though, Jen, you tell the story, then the child that is the mathematician, right? Then what they're going to do is they're going to say, well, I wonder what year that was, right? See, that's where the learning comes
Yep.
in. And then the kid that, you know, that doesn't, thinks, hey, my family's farmers, or I've been farmers. And then they hear something about a farmer and they think, wow, I didn't know that person was a farmer. I want to find out about farming. Farming was behind the curve. When my son went to college, took his college, we took him down to the Eastern Shore of Maryland to enroll in college. And they were just begging people to go into agriculture. Well, you know why kids didn't go into agriculture? Because they were behind the curve with technology. But now you get into that daggone combine and it is freaking goes by itself. The only thing they do is turn it heat, air conditioning, TV, radio, you put your feet back.
Yeah.
It is incredible. But no
Yeah.
wonder they couldn't get kids in it. They were behind the technology. People don't let kids bring in their innovative thoughts. And that's why we're losing history. And I believe that. That's why we've lost church organizations. That's why we've lost all of our festivals that we used to have and the things that we used to celebrate, because those old people didn't want to change. They didn't want, you got somebody volunteering and you treated them bad and you wanted them to do it like you always did it. But
Yep.
like the store, my kids hired a consultant for the Bucktown store. And what they want to do is have you go on your phone and you get the little QR code and you can see what this is. You can see the little story of what happened to Harriet Tubman,
That's
right?
great.
You've got to keep going on with life and
Yep.
modernize everything.
Yep. Yep.
But you can bring history right along in with it,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly. Just because you're adding that technology and modernizing it, it doesn't mean you're taking away history. It's
No,
an
what you're
opportunity
doing
to
is
expose
sparking
more
something in
people.
somebody.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, it's an opportunity for growth.
We have an
Yes.
1850 one-room schoolhouse that we use. And during COVID, actually, I created a whole online virtual program for it. So
Mhm.
anyone could visit and learn.
Yes.
But it's, it definitely, got to retain that, but do it, we can do it in different ways.
Yes.
So tell me a little, so right now, Blackwater Adventures. So what does it include? Give me the breadth of what you do. And I presume you still have this great relationship with the Hyatt, but you've probably, I'm assuming the business has taken a life of its own as far as people knowing about you. So the Hyatt is probably a piece of it.
Yes.
So tell me a little bit more about the business because it sounds exciting. Totally up my alley.
Sure. It's incredible to do something that's fun, to people
And
that are happy.
outside
Yeah.
and yeah,
Yeah,
all
you
about
don't have to worry
nature.
about people being in a bad mood because they're on
Yeah.
vacation.
Yep.
Lest the weather driving them crazy. I try to prepare for that too. But anyway, because if you're not talking, when you're doing a tour, if you're not talking to the youngest one in the group, you're going to lose the whole group.
Yep.
So anyway, people might think that's dumbing down, but it's really not, because an adult can ask a question and you can answer that really quickly. But anyway, we started like just biking and kayaking, and then then we bought the warehouse down, the canning warehouse. So we do events down there. The Hyatt does some events. We've done some weddings. We don't do a whole lot of that because we don't have a whole lot of parking. And you can tell people that they can't park down here, there. And we have a little transportation company. We have some buses. So we bus people back and forth, but they still think, I know the bride and the groom, I know this. And you can't park on the farmer's stuff. They don't like it. So,
Yeah.
so we don't advertise with weddings, but if we did, we would be very busy. The pictures are absolutely incredible. And it's right there on the little Blackwater. And, to be having your wedding and an eagle fly by, squawking it's a good omen.
Yes.
Anyway, so we take people to different rivers, so that they can keep coming over and over and over and not have to do the same thing. We do bike winery tours at Layton's Chance. That's a family-owned winery here
Nice.
in Dorchester County. So we bike to the winery and then the bus picks them up. They don't drink and drive.
I was going to say, coming home might be a problem.
Right. It's perfect because we have our own
I love it.
transportation company. If sometimes we'll just take the truck there. I'll put my bikes on the truck and leave, and then the bus will come back and pick them up. So we got a good little thing going here.
That's great, though.
And,
I really like that.
Yeah, so we do kayak and winery tours, bike winery tours, and I'm a step-on bus guide. I'm certified by the National Park. We are by the National Park Service Underground Railroad Network to Freedom to do Underground Railroad tours. So that's a
Wow.
really cool thing. So we can do that. But we do that. We do biking, hiking, kayaking tours. So all the stuff at the Hyatt, we're open all year long at the cannery. And if the weather's
Okay.
good, you can, we have online booking. And we don't take people out in the kayak if the water's 50 degrees unless you take a guide. But typically people don't go out. We can, if the weather's good, we stay out till November. And then we'll start up again. Like if in February you get a good day, people will call and just want to go outside, bike or kayak. And so we do that down there all year if they call, it's by reservation. But February we can start getting busy. March, by April, because we have a name is
Yeah.
April we start with. It's
So, tell me a little bit more about the cannery.
Mhm.
What are you doing there?
We have a little retail shop. That's where our offices are. If you saw those guys from those pickers, what's their name? American Pickers. Is that what it's called?
Yes, I think
Yeah,
so.
well, they were here. Yeah, those guys were here. And I wanted them to come into the warehouse to see all the stuff that we still have that we haven't put in any place, right? And my
Did
husband
they
thought, that's
come
a great
in?
idea. Be great advertising. No, I had to call them and tell them they couldn't come because they didn't want them to see it. So it's filled with just all the stuff that they think one day they're going to put somewhere. But I think they might be getting over it because we want to.
So wait, they didn't come or they
No,
did come?
they didn't come.
Oh.
They wouldn't let them. Don't look at my stuff. This is my stuff.
Oh, that's so
Little
funny.
wackadoos. Yeah. No. They love antiques. And this warehouse is it's like three different parts. It's like this huge A-frame and it's all concrete. And then there's this middle place where that place is where they would take the tomato peels off and the concrete goes down like a little sliding board. But I mean, you know what I mean. And they took the peels and put them right back out into the river. Isn't
Oh,
that fun?
wow.
So you've got this little area and we call it the bay. And then there's another big A-frame beside that. It's enormous.
Wow.
That's where we had her. That's how the wedding started. We had our daughter's reception. She got married on our front porch here, and then her reception was down. And that's why we got doing some weddings down there because people see the pictures and they want that too. And then there's a little porch where we do a lot of entertaining out there. So like bike tourist companies, right? They'll come and they'll eat there. That'll be one of their stops. And so you've got all these picnic tables and stuff, and it's right there on the
Nice.
river. And that's where we put the kayaks out. And so we see a lot of that where we partner with people. American Cruise Lines comes here to Cambridge, and they bring people biking and kayaking, which is really cool. Something physical for the younger people on the boat to do. So that's fun.
That's terrific.
Mhm.
Wow. Boy, I like your lifestyle.
Oh, listen, I wouldn't change a thing except some attitudes. You know how family
Well,
is, right?
that's
Everybody's
part of
different. All three
life.
of your kids different, right?
For going forward, any plans for adding anything or expanding anything or changing anything up with the business?
Are you kidding? I said I had three kids, three
So
in-laws, and 8 grandchildren.
so they're the
They have
ones who,
big dreams, and I want to make them all come true. They have big dreams. Yeah, my
I,
kids are all avid hunters. They all live off the land. They all
okay.
have ducks, geese. I mean, ducks. Well, they do have some geese, but anyway, turkeys. They've got their own beehives. They've got me totally off plastic onto glass.
That's great.
They're all, so I am a Chickamaucomico Indian from the Nanacoke tribe. My mother's great-great-grandmother was a Native American. And I love the story that my father tells me that he would take her to see her great-grandmother, and she would be out in the middle of the Chickamaucomico River on a rowboat smoking her pipe. It's a great
Good for
story.
her.
Yeah, he said she was ugly. My mother was one of the most beautiful women in Dorchester County, and men would tell me that all the time, these older men that were my mother and father's age. And then when they saw me after my parents died, my mother died first at 81, and then my dad lived till 96. And so they'd say, your mother was the most beautiful woman in Dorchester. And I would say, I know, my father would say, when just to get us, get us going, he'd say, your great grandmother was the ugliest woman and you'd say, no, I'm not buying it. So you know why? She never cut her hair. He said, when I met her, it was like a little darker black with some white in it. And when she died, it was all haggly gray. Never cut. She never cut her hair. Yeah, so he found that unattractive. How you like that? I love that.
That's funny. Wow,
It
your
is.
dad died at 96.
Yes.
Wow.
Hmm.
Wow.
Yes.
That's impressive.
He was a piece of work. It was a real piece of work. It was something.
You had mentioned that the county is one of the greenest
Mhm.
counties. What do you mean by that?
It is the greenest. It's the least developed county. We have the least
Okay.
population. It's the least developed county in the state. Lots of farm area. The government, state and feds have bought a lot of land here. Blackwater National Wildlife Refuge owns over 32,000 acres. Not sure what account management, that's a state. But it's all for wildlife. It's not for people. People hear that and they think it's like a park where people go.
Right.
Blackwater Refuge has a 2.6 mile wildlife drive. And in the drive is a couple walking trails, but outside of that is 2 walking trails for the public. It's all about waterfowl.
Okay.
So the animals here are incredible. So teaching people about the eagles, we have the second largest concentration of bald eagles on the continental US. We're second
Wow.
only to the Everglades of Florida. We're third in the nation,
Wow.
with Alaska being first. And so if you would ask me, the most exhilarating thing in my life is when the eagles are mating. Gosh.
I would never think that, like
No.
that area what is it about that area
Well,
that,
there's nobody here. There's nothing here. And when people want to go kayaking, and they, in the beginning, especially, they wanted to go to Blackwater, the Blackwater River, because it's the most famous. And I was like, man, you don't want to go to the Blackwater, and they were like, yes, it's, famous. Oh, I said, but look, where more people are, less animals are. Right. And that is the most paddled river in this county forever. Since I worked at Blackwater when I was 16 years old. Believe me, it's the most paddled river. Why don't you want to go where less people are? You'll see
right?
more. And now, people don't really know that it's the most paddled river. So that's really cool. So we can take them to the Transquakin is incredible. The Chickamaucomico is incredible. So you take them where less people are and they're going to see more.
Absolutely.
It is absolutely, the animals here are astounding. We have the Delmarva fox squirrel. He just came off the endangered list a few years ago. And if you've
Wow.
never seen a Delmarva fox squirrel in the flesh, I just got so excited. I've told everybody and texted them all the family, because at our warehouse, right before you get to it, is this brush, these trees. And it's that and the driveway that goes behind the warehouse. And then the warehouse is very close. So it's this trees with the brush all in it. And so I was coming up, and I am in love with Delmarva squirrels. And I saw this fox squirrel, and I can't stop talking about it because it just happened a few days ago. Have you ever seen one?
No.
Oh my God.
I have to look it up.
You know what Delmarva means? Please, dear God, let her know what Delmarva means.
No, I don't.
Please.
Sorry. I'm sorry.
So
I'm
listen,
learning a lot, okay? And I'll retain it.
I entertain many over the years from the beginning, travel writers. So I had travel writers here a couple of years ago, and they were from Germany. And I said, do you know what Delmarva means? We were on the kayak, and it was February, but it was a pretty day. And so this one lady said, oh, she said, I know. She said, that's Mexican. I said, no, Del, it's Mexican. Mexican. I said, it's not. Delaware, Maryland, Virginia. I live on the Delmarva Peninsula.
Got it.
These squirrels you can only find in Delaware, Maryland, and Virginia. But not only can you only find them in those states, but you can only find them in the marsh. They're marsh squirrels. And I worked with Mr. Guy Willie, who was famous at Blackwater Refuge. He worked there. And so I worked with him this summer. I worked there at 16 to tag them. So we called them, and then we tag them and put them back and let them go. So anyway, these squirrels are just incredible. They're as big as a guinea pig. They're not a little gray squirrel. They're as big as a guinea pig. And they have little round teddy bear ears instead of pointed ears. And they're called a fox squirrel because of their tail.
Okay.
So think about the squirrel and Beatrix Potter, it's just this big, stunning tail. And when you see one, you're just like this. I want to pet it. I want to pet it and cuddle it. And he's white.
That's
he's very
great.
white. He's so beautiful. He's so, so beautiful. Look him up, the Delmarva.
I will, definitely. So if I come down to do one of your tours, if I didn't want to stay at the Hyatt, are there places a little more rustic to stay at?
Sure. We have the chain hotels, the Comfort Inn and Quality Inn and all that stuff. But the fun ways for me is all of the vacation rental homes. So we serve, that's another thing we do that I forgot, right? We serve the vacation rental homes. We take them boats, kayaks, and bikes for people who are visiting here at these vacation rental homes. But a lot of people, they don't want to clean up or cook or do any of that stuff. So they want hotels. So we've got the resort, we've got the chain hotels, and then we've got these vacation rental homes. All of them are all on the river. Remember I said that 2 rivers in the bay and all those tributaries. So when people come, we do crab feasts for them. So if they've never had a crab feast, we lay down the brown paper and we bring the steamed corn that's steamed and teach them how to pick, and then we leave them to their mess. But that's a lot of fun too. And they can catch crabs out there, but they don't know what to do with them. But it's fun to catch them. And they fish and all that kind of stuff. But
that's great. Well, you've sold me. I definitely want to visit.
Listen, they all have pools and hot tubs and screened in porches and outside porches. It's just, I love the vacation rental homes here. I really do. I don't have any. There used to be a couple that I would think if they were staying there, I'd think. But that nowadays, I don't know of any that aren't ones that I would stay in myself.
Right.
So,
and what do you feel is personally the ideal time of year to come down?
No, girl, any time of the year is great. Everybody has that. Listen, in the spring, everything's growing and coming up and flooding, and it's just incredible. And then in the summertime, everything's blooming and it's hot, and you can splash yourself with the water.
Yeah.
And in the wintertime, listen, you have not lived. I tell everybody this is a truth, until you've been out on the Transquaking River when the snow starts falling down.
That's honestly, that's very appealing. There's something
Everybody
different.
says they want to go with me. I'll call you. Everybody says they want to go with me. But then when I say, hey, it started to snow, let's go kayak. And they're like, no, man, go by yourself. I've never had anybody go with me because they sissy babies. They don't want to be cold. But listen, it's magical. If you go out there and hear that snow hitting on the leaves and see what I do is therapeutic, right? I really believe that. Being a hairdresser, is the same way. Somebody walks out of there and they feel better.
Yep.
When they left and when they came in. And what I do is the same way, right? They feel better. Greatest compliment I ever had, Lincoln University. I did all of their staff. I did a Phil Goody from Goody's Marine is their charter captain. And so we go out and we entertain them, and they do a cocktail cruise. So the Hyatt puts all their stuff on them. So they were a lot of fun, and they get off the boat and they're standing there on that floating dock at the Hyatt, and they start screaming at me, Susan, Susan. I said, get in the hotel. Go. They've got more drinks in there. Go. Go. They said, no, we've been standing there talking. We got to tell you something. I said, all right, what do you want? And they said, we all decided that when the apocalypse comes, we're coming back here with you. We're coming back. I said, I got 7 bedrooms, love to cook. Come on. So I tell them all that stuff, that I love to cook and all that stuff. And so by the time they leave, and so when I tell them about the county, right, and being Native American, it's really cool that Air County had 2 tribes, the Choptank tribe on this side of the Heart and the Nanakoke tribe. But I tell them this stuff because it's really true. There's no documented skirmishes between those 2 tribes. They never fought. And then I ask people why. And then when you ask people that have letters after their name, right, they really want to answer you. It's so funny, right? So they come up with some stuff, but they never fought. And sometimes they do come up with it. But their resources, you've got the food in the forest, you've got the food that you can plant in all of this farmland. This Bucktown yields the best farmland in the state of Maryland. And then you've got all the rivers with all the food in it. So that's why when the apocalypse comes, see, I'm on autopilot when I talk. So, that's why they said they're going to come back here when the apocalypse comes. It's the greatest compliment. When the apocalypse comes, come on, because there'll be tents out here, and
and you'll be
it's going to be
cooking
the
up a
biggest party
storm.
you've ever seen. We're going down laughing.
I don't blame you. I don't blame you. That's terrific. In the area, are there other people doing anything similar, or are you?
When we started, it was really interesting. There was probably about 4 or 5 places, and they were doing stuff with the Hyatt at first, and nobody had a bike company. That's why I did the bike tours first.
Right.
But when you do something right, you get good reviews, right?
Yes.
So then the next year we did the kayak and the bikes. Yep. And I say I because I was it. Right. There was no we back then. And then my kids told me how embarrassed they were of me pulling the trailer behind the Suburban. The trailer was a trailer that if you went around a corner too much, it would fall over. Oh. And I would say, sit right in this corner. Don't get out. I'm going to go put the kayaks back on. Right. So you start, right. And you just keep adding on and adding on. And all of those people went away. Really? They all went away. You know why they went away? Because my husband and I call us little nobody nothings from nowhere. Right. So we're not well educated. Right. Both of us have our GED. And so we just did everything with common sense. But these people that had these businesses were all that in a bag of chips, right? And they were like decked out. They had this place that they even bought the store or they leased it, and they put all this stuff in it, and they bought all this stuff to sell. And, I'm telling you, it's probably been 10 years or 8 years that we just started selling T-shirts and hats, right? And so, they had all this stuff. And the tourism wasn't enough to sustain what they put their money into. And then they'd hire people. Most of them hired people to run their business. And listen, right. That's a really big no. Right? Because nobody's going to love people like you do. So I think that maybe people saw it as a business opportunity, and we see it as a way to meet people from all over the world.
Right.
All over the world. Because they come here to the East Coast and they're looking for kayaks, and, they want to get outside, especially Dutch people. We see a lot of people, we see a lot of international journalists coming here that write stories. And I've been in 2 German TV shows.
Really?
Isn't that funny? One was a Blues Clues version of German. But when I talk German, it was pretty funny to hear it. They sent me.
That's interesting.
I've had the great adventure, girl.
Yes, you have. And like you said, it really came down to you, people connect with you. Your enthusiasm, your energy, you're amazing. And just the history that you're teaching. I mean, there's a lot of components to what you're delivering. It's not just a kayak trip or a bike trip. There's so much more to it.
Right. It really is. I live in the greatest place in the world.
I can't wait to visit.
I can't wait for you to come.
I definitely will. I mean,
If it's snowing, I'm going to text you.
You should, because I'm telling you, I'm the person who would come.
You would go?
Yes, I
Oh!
would. I totally would.
Several years, right? This happened. Kids from the university there in New York. It probably happened 2 or 3 years in a row, but I'm not there anymore. My kids run it, right? So I'm retired. They call me, "Hey, can you drive I drove the bus 3 nights in a row and I'm dead. I slept 10 hours last night, taking a bunch of drunks.
Oh, jeez.
Because when they get the bus, they're going like it's parties for businesses
Right.
or weddings. So the wedding was
I can't wait to tell people about this. So
great.
thank
I'm
you.
going
Is
to
there
tell you one
anything?
little thing about the history. That's just
Yeah, go ahead.
this one little
Yep, please.
caveat here is that most people don't know that this is where Abraham Lincoln's secret cabinet member lived and is buried. And they don't know about her. There's books
Really?
written about her, Woman with a Sword. A movie came out about her. It was by invitation only, and it premiered at the Hyatt, called The Lost River. And if you look at the picture of Abraham Lincoln at the table signing the proclamation, behind
Okay.
him is an empty chair with her shawl and all of her books and maps that she used to win the Civil War. Her name is Anna Ella Carroll. Carroll County in Maryland is named after the Carroll family. Her father was the only Carroll family member to become governor of the state of Maryland. So look, there you go. Now I've wet your whistle. Come on,
Yes,
girl.
no, you have, because now I'm going to be doing some research. That's terrific. Wow. Okay, can't wait to meet you.
Can't wait to meet you.
All right, well, thank you so much. And
You're
I
welcome.
definitely will be in touch, Susan.
Sounds great. This has been fun.
All right, take care. I hope our AgriTourist podcast prompts you to think more about where your food comes from, whether it be your vegetables, fruits, meats, and even those sweet treats. Don't forget to subscribe and share this podcast with someone you think may truly benefit from or be inspired by it. Visit us at agra-tourist.com. Until next time. As we are learning from many of our farmers and entrepreneurs, strong connections help propel our visions. Through my interview with Lisa Chase from the University of Vermont Extension and Vermont Tourism Research Center, I was connected to an exciting and new organization called the Global Agritourism Network, or GAN for short. The Global Network is made up of agritourism stakeholders from around the world. They include farmers and ranchers, researchers, educators, community planners, policymakers, agricultural service providers, and tour operators, among others. It is currently free to join, so if you have any interest in agritourism, check them out at agritourism.urac.edu/GAN, or just Google Global Agritourism Network. The link will be in our show notes as well. You never know, this global network may help you take your agritourism vision to the next level.